A group of mostly white, angry teenagers set to the streets to destroy a 105-year-old statue on the historic campus of the University of North Carolina, Chappel Hill. Apparently, their feelings were so strong, nothing but the pedestal remains. For college students, an obvious goal is to learn from the past. Apparently, these students are merely doomed to repeat it. I'm Ben Davies, this is Pure Hollywood. History is as messy and imperfect as any human's life is. If we studied my life or any of these angry children's lives, we would be horrified at some of the details. But what history allows us to do is learn from the past, to heed warnings, examples, and see how far we have come together. And we all hope that when history looks back on us, we will be on the right side of it. However, this sanctimonious idea that we are all perfect right now and people in the past should be ignored because of things they did or practices they took part in can have a horrifying result. Two of the most obvious examples being George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, two of the greatest men who ever set foot on this continent, who laid the foundation for all the freedoms and progresses we have made. However, their legacy and even monuments are being threatened because both of these men at one point owned slaves. George Washington even releasing his before it was even abolished, and Thomas Jefferson living in a state that made it illegal for him to free his slaves. And because of this, we're supposed to destroy their legacy, ignore all the amazing things that these people did, and destroy statues. Okay, I have three problems with this action of the University of North Carolina. The mob rule is something that millions of Americans have sacrificed their lives to ensure that we do not have to live under the fear of. We live in a democratic republic. We have a society of laws and processes. And I'm sorry if you feel like your life cannot go on because of a 105-year-old statue. But your outrage does not justify illegal actions. When enough people vote and agree to remove the statue, that's totally fine. That's welcome. Put it in a museum. Everyone on the left loves mobs until they come for them. 2. The history of North Carolina itself. The North Carolina mascot is the Tar Heel, which makes no sense unless you know the historical context. It comes from the way the North Carolina men fought in the Civil War, because facing down certain death, these men would never retreat like they had tar stuck to their heels. Regardless of the side they fought on, this is a lesson in action that every person can look up to and respect. The college itself stayed in service the entire Civil War, even though 40% of its student body was called up to fight. And this was in the bloodiest battle in American history. Many of these students died during this war. And it is true that most of the students fought in the Confederacy and not in the Union. But let me ask you this, if their state was swapped, geography-wise, with Massachusetts, would they have fought in the Confederacy? Keep in mind, this was before PragerU University videos were available to teach you. You would have grown up in a state where slavery was legal, and had always been, and your friends and family were also called up to fight. And it's a difficult thing to look back and judge what someone would have known or may not have known, or what was in their heart for that matter, but you can judge people on their actions, the way they carried themselves. And they conducted themselves like Tar Heels. And we can sit back and look down from above driving our Priuses and say, no, we never would have fought for the Confederacy. But sometimes being on the right side of history merely means being born on the right side of a line drawn in the sand between the North and the South. 3. What the statue represents itself. The Silent Sam statue gets its name from the fact that the soldier does not have a cartridge on its belt, meaning he cannot fire his gun. It's symbolic. You see a boy dropping his books and taking up the call to action. Now, if you remove the side that this particular statue was fighting for, this would be a great action to be remembered. And the statue was erected to honor the students that made the call to action and died in the process. Is there not a way to acknowledge the significance and the loss of life, and to not erase history and still function and keep perspective on these things? Now, I can't believe I have to say this, but it should be painfully clear and obvious the practice of slavery was and is abhorrent, and no one worth talking to today would believe otherwise. However, it is a part of history, and thankfully it's just that. History. A history that goes back to the beginning of time and still being practiced in the Middle East. But fortunately, here in the United States, it was abolished by hundreds and thousands of men giving their lives. Not protesting, but paying the ultimate price, many of which who were the same age as these students protesting, who literally walked the same grounds they walk on today, had the same dreams. And because of beliefs, upbringings, the state they were born in, or the pressure of their peers, they answered the call and gave the ultimate sacrifice. And because of this, they will never have the chance to walk across the stage at graduation like these students will. And I'm sure these students who fought in the Confederacy would hope that you could look back and at the very least learn from their mistakes and hopefully respect the bravery and the lives they lost. And maybe just instill the desire to stand tall and be unmoved like you have tar on your heels, when it's not just your feelings on the line, but rather your life. I'm Ben Davies, this is Pure Hollywood. Alright, so if you enjoyed that video, please consider becoming a premium member to The Rebel. That way you have first access to Pure Hollywood and the entire Rebel lineup.